Hey there, alchemists. So, we have been going into the mystical laws. And the mystical laws are the laws of transformation because when we embody a mystical law, we take it within us and we do the work within us, and then that radiates out into our lives. Now, I have been talking about this evolutionary shift that we are experiencing, and we've been noticing it in a really big way since the pandemic, right? Now, my favorite author, Carolyn Myss, would say that this evolutionary shift really was triggered in the 1940s when Oppenheimer split the atom. And so think about it this way. Our ancestors from 100 years ago, they really lived in a physical world, right? My great-grandmother would never have said something like, well, what you think about, you bring about. Change your thinking, change your life. She never would have said that. She would never have said, we create our own reality. Okay? Our family from 100 years ago, they were a people, they probably worked hard, they were focused on the physical world, and they probably prayed to the God of their religion. They followed the rules or a code of conduct, right? Either set out by religious institutions or family traditions, right? This is how we've always done it. And so because this is how we've always done it, this is how it's good enough for us, right? So we started then in this evolution, and I'm not sure when this would have happened, but maybe like in the 50s when there was more of this idea of personal success and innovation and having the material things that we wanted, right? And then we evolved again into this idea of equality and harmony. And then there was the idea of social justice and reform came about, and then environmental awareness. And then we had like the Beatles traveling around India and coming back to the West and talking about meditation and transcendence, right? So at that point then, we really do have this thought form of we create our own reality. And now this thought form has gone global. Now in the Unity movement, of course, this thought form was part of the original teachings in the 1800s, but it wasn't global. Not everyone could understand it. The idea of we create our own reality, when I was younger, I could not comprehend that. And I was really into New Agey stuff, right? So we have this movement now where we have authors like Louise Hay writing You Can Heal Your Life, right? And talking about the connection between mind and body. We have another author, Shakti Gawain, in her book Creative Visualization, using the power of your imagination to visualize the reality that you could create. So right now we do live in a time of expanded consciousness. We have an awareness of the unseen world. We have a more holistic view of life. We want to treat our bodies holistically, and we want to treat the planet holistically, right? We really have a global consciousness now, right? We understand this idea that all are one in a very different way than our family of 100 years ago would have understood it, because we now live in an age of energy consciousness. Just get comfortable there, Lilu. Sorry if I'm in your way. All right, so 100 years ago, our families, they would have watched the conditions in their life, in their physical reality, to respond if needed. Now, we are responding to physical conditions, but we are also responding to energy, right? When we go through a crisis, we tend to look at the physical and the energetic aspect of it, okay? Right? We have this idea that if energy precedes matter, right, in terms of creation, our thoughts create our experiences. And so now we'll have to ask ourselves, what's my part in this? Right? And again, this is our third unity principle. We create our experiences through our way of thinking and acting. right? So what is my part in whatever's going on? Where's my consciousness, right? Is it my consciousness at life happens to me, right? Where I am in victim consciousness and I have no power. Or is my consciousness in life happens as me, right? Where I am thinking and acting and creating my experience. So we know that our interaction with life starts with our way of thinking and our belief system. So these mystical teachings, they've been around for forever, but they were mostly just about helping people lessen their suffering. Okay, 100 years ago, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, people were born into what they would do, and they didn't have freedom to choose something differently. 500 years ago, if a boy was born into a family and his father was a farmer, he likely would grow up to be a farmer. Or if he was born to a man who was a father who was maybe an iron worker, like that's what he would do. Daughters were taught how to be mothers and wives, okay? So these mystical teachings were a matter of lessening our suffering. And it is still true for us today. But see, now we have more choice. We have more opportunities and we have more authority in our lives. Our parents and our village, they don't tell us what to do anymore. They try, right? But ultimately, how we live our lives is a matter of our choices. Okay, our lives are directed by the choices that we make. And the choices we make are directly influenced by our level of consciousness. Life happens to me, or life happens as me. So I'm going to talk about spiritual congruence because it relates directly to our choices. Now, Carolyn May says, becoming a conscious person is all about realizing the full potential of the power of choice. Our days are filled with choices, and all the choices that we make, some of them serve us and some of them don't, right? And then to have congruency just means that it's when our actions support what we desire to create. So let's say that we want to experience greater things. Maybe we want to be a stronger, healthier version of ourselves, or a more prosperous version of ourselves. Or maybe we want to be somebody who's more adventurous or has inner peace, right? Or we want to be really, really creative. And so that means that to be in congruence, we would have to make choices that align with that. But we don't always do that. It can be complicated because most of our beliefs are unconscious. So we may have the desire to be more prosperous, but if we have an unconscious belief that thinks and believes, I'll never make money, making money is hard, I'm no good with money, then we'll make choices that are in congruence with that unconscious belief, right? So if we want to live in spiritual congruency and we want to be a more prosperous person, we would think about, consciously pay attention to how we're spending our money, right? And if we have a really bad day and think, oh, I deserve to do some retail therapy, and you get a pair of leather boots and a leather jacket, you may just be out of congruency then with your desire. So we want to first realize the power of our choices. Some of our choices will empower us. Some of our choices, when we make them, we'll feel it right away that we are losing power, right? That feeling of, oh, why did I say yes to help this person with something? And now, like, I promised myself I wouldn't do that again. I wouldn't put myself in that position. Okay. Or that feeling of, wow, I actually said no, that I didn't want to do this thing and I feel empowered, right? We feel it. So we do want to pay attention. And then we want to be able to identify when we make a choice that causes us suffering. And that's not always easy because we may not even understand that we have a choice. For example, back when my aunt was still alive, and this has been quite a while since like 2014 or 15, but my aunt was sick with Lewy body dementia. We didn't know it at the time, but I felt like she needed to be in nursing care. Like she lived alone. I was the only one around looking out for her. And I talked to her about it. She didn't want to go into nursing care. She's like, no, you're doing great. I only want you to take care of me. In that moment, I believed I did not have a choice. But I actually did. I could have gone against her wishes and said, no, you need to go into nursing care. I cannot handle this. Okay, which was true. But I didn't know that was an option. And so I said, okay, I'll continue to be your caregiver, even though I'm losing so much sleep, even though I had so much anxiety, even though my kids who still lived at home at the time needed me around more than I was, right? But I didn't understand that I could have chosen differently, right? We want to notice when we make a choice. Did we just choose out of life happens to me consciousness, which was how I chose, right? When I told her, yes, okay, I'll be your caregiver, I was choosing from a life happens to me consciousness. I have no power in this situation. I just have to do what she wants, right? And we also know that when we choose from life happens through me consciousness, we also know that feels pretty good, right? So we want to notice where our consciousness is because it directly affects our choices, okay? And they call that above the line thinking versus below the line thinking. And above the line thinking is life happens through me, for me, as me, right? Below the line thinking is it's life happens to me, but it can also be I happen to life. Now, I happen to life is different from life happens as me. Because with I happen to life, the implication is I don't like what's going on out there, so I'm going to change it. Because if I can't change it, then I can't be happy. Right? So life happens to me or I happen to life both implies something out in our environment is not good enough and it has to change so we can be happy. Okay? But you can see that changing our thinking to change our life can be so difficult. In fact, this is the whole story, the meaning behind the story of Jacob wrestling the angel. Because it was metaphysically, this is a story about a shift in consciousness. And Jacob had to really, really struggle. And it was such a difficult struggle that if you know the story, you know the angel crippled him in the middle of all of this. But Jacob kept asking for the blessing. Now, he finally got his blessing, but he was crippled for life afterwards. Now, often when we are seeking to change our thinking so we can change our lives, it is so difficult. And we become crippled also. And so we might give up, right? Because we're wrestling the angel and it is so hard. It is just so hard. Now, here is where I also love the power of complaint-free living, right? Here's the purple bracelet. When we practice complaint-free living, this up-levels our way of thinking, okay? Because if we are complaining and we are blaming, we're focusing on what's wrong in our life. We're focusing on what's missing in our lives. But we are in life happens to me consciousness. Because we're not actually, when we're complaining, we're not actually sharing with somebody who could help us become solution-oriented, right? And again, we go back to our third unity principle. We create our experiences through our way of thinking and acting. Now, if we are complaining, we'll always find more to complain about because of our brain's reticular activating system, right? If we're focusing on complaining, the brain will continue to seek things for us to complain about. Right? Now, to prove my point, you can decide, you can play a game with us, right? And just over the next week, decide that you're going to see the number 888 everywhere. Not 1111. Everybody sees 1111. Look for 888 or look for palm trees, okay? And just keep saying that's what you're going to look for. You're going to look for that. And your brain will prove you right by pointing out every palm tree or every license plate with 888 on it, okay? Or every address, okay? Now, when we go complaint-free, it doesn't mean that we just never say anything or that we have to settle or tolerate a bad situation. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of people won't try out the complaint-free living program, because they think, oh, I just have to tolerate all this stuff, right? But no, there's a big difference between complaining and just stating the facts, right? I mean, if a waiter brought you a cold cup of coffee, you don't have to complain about the coffee, right? You don't have to go tweet about how cold the coffee is, right? You just say, oh, hey, this coffee's cold. Can I get a warm up? That's all you have to do, right? We can state the facts without placing blame, right? We find the person who can help. Also, when we express grief or pain or discontent, that's not actually complaining, right? If you injure your back, you're allowed to say, I'm going to have to get up and move around a little bit here. I've been sitting too long and I ended up injuring my back. It's crazy, right? It's not necessarily complaining, right? You might just need to say, hey, I hate the world right now because I'm grieving the loss of somebody so important to me. And I hate that the world just keeps going round and round. And I don't see how it can because I feel so broken inside with this loss, right? Discontent. The housing market is crazy right now. We make offers on homes and that just doesn't pan out because it's kind of like vultures out there. Like everybody's just jumping on everything that's for sale. Like there's really a lack consciousness out there. So I'm trying to just wrap my mind around it. Like what's the next thing I could do to help, facilitate getting this house? So we can express grief, pain, or discontent. It's not complaining. Right? Because going complaint-free, it's not about pretending everything's okay. Complaint-free is about gaining awareness of where we are thinking. If we're thinking below the line, life happens to me. Or if we're thinking above the line, life happens as me. Now, as we're doing complaint-free living, we'll also go through what you call the 4 stages of competence. And you've probably heard of that, right? You have, first of all, you have unconscious incompetence. And that's the phase where we don't know what we don't know, right? We don't know what we don't know. And we don't know how hard it's going to be to do something. And we're learning. It's like, okay, this will benefit me. Complaint-free living will help me rewire my brain and I will up-level my consciousness. But here at the same time, we discover, wow, I had no idea how much I actually complained, how much I actually gripe about things, right? Then we go into conscious incompetence. Now we know what we don't know, and we realize how much effort it's going to take. And here's where it's really good to be part of a community and get some support for this, right? And show your friends, show your friends your purple bracelet. It's like, hey, wow, I'm reprogramming my mind. Woo! It's going, it's happening, right? But here also is where we want to give ourselves a break. We're learning a new skill, so we don't want to just give up because the first day we complained 50 times. It's like, oh my God, this is too hard. I can't do this. If you were to plant a garden for the first time, you wouldn't go out there the next day and see that it's still just dirt. There's no seedling sprouted yet. And you wouldn't just say, this isn't working. You wouldn't do that to your garden, right? In the garden, there's a lot happening beneath the surface. And every time you notice if you're complaining, if you're blaming, if you're judging, you notice it. So there's a lot happening beneath the surface in your own consciousness, right? As the roots in your garden are becoming stronger, the roots of your new habits are becoming stronger, right? You'll notice. So you may notice a lot of complaining the first day, but just noticing it is already setting up a huge change in your consciousness. Now we move to the third stage, which is conscious competence. This is where we are aware, and now we know how to do something. We know that it takes effort, but now it's going to become a choice for us. A complaint will pop into our head and we'll decide, okay, what do I want to do with that? Do I want to go ahead and complain because I'm feeling kind of salty? Maybe I want to complain, right? Or maybe I'll just be like, yeah, no, it's not worth it. I've gone like 10 days without complaining. I'm not going to blow it all on that, okay? Maybe I'll look for a solution, okay? And then we move into the fourth stage, which is unconscious competence, right? Here's where it becomes automatic. You don't have to think about it. You just know, oh, that's a complaint. I'm not going to say anything there, right? It becomes second nature. And you really can get to this level. I do it now most of the time when I do complaint-free, but I've been doing complaint-free on a yearly basis since the year 2007, okay? And the first time I went through my 21 days took me about 4 months. 4 months, right? Because I had to keep starting over. So when we're changing our thinking to change our lives, and I swear, complaint-free living is the most powerful way to change your thinking, to change your life. It becomes training day. Like, this is training day. This is training day. So here's our call to action this week. And this is from our third principle. I create my experiences through my way of thinking and acting. Let's say it again. Say it with me. I create my experiences through my way of thinking and acting. Carolyn Mace says this: there is nothing easy about living a conscious life, but it's even more treacherous to live an unconscious one. We are living in times of massive change. The most crucial thing that we can do right now is to live in these spiritual truths and to demonstrate that they can be done, to demonstrate what one lit soul can do. So here's our invitation. Remember who you are doing this for. Your family, your friends, your loved ones, your community, yourself. You are doing this for yourself. So you can ask yourself all through the week, what are the choices that I'm making right now? What am I working with here as I make my choices? Am I below the line? Am I complaining, blaming, or am I above the line? Am I speaking words of power? Am I feeling empowered? Right? Am I thinking, yeah, life happens as me, right? Life happens through me, for me, as me, right? We're doing all of this so we can expand our territory and call forth greater good for ourselves and for others. And guess what? It is worth the effort. Every moment of wrestling with the angel is worth the effort, because then you will see into this world as a mystic. That God is all things, everything that's ever been and everything that's yet to be. And it's every idea, every inspiration, every bit of divine guidance, but it's also the spark in you and in every person that you know. So you see into this world as a mystic, seeing God as everywhere present, seeing all of this life of ours as sacred. And then you act in the world as an alchemist. You choose to stand in your authority. You choose to train yourself with this spiritual fitness, right? You choose to change up your way of thinking and acting. You're ready to up level how you show up in your life. You're ready to up level and be in congruence with the things that matter. Because this is how we create heaven on earth. So until next time, remember, you are divinely designed to be doing all of this. You are a one-time, one-of-a-kind cosmic event, and in everything you do, you are blessed, and so it is.